and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting episode of the Paul Brown Show. We're shooting live from 2 Expose You Studio. We have Mr. Darryl Goodman, he's the founder. Mr. Ray Harvey, chief engineer. I have a special guest. I have Mr. Reverend Darryl Gray. He's a former state senator in Kansas. He burst into St. Louis scene and a protest leader during the 2017 is the ex-cop Jason Stokely verdict protest and remains on the streets as a leader and expert U.S. protest against police brutality. How you doing there, Reverend Darryl Gray?
Brother Paul Brown, I'm doing fine. As I told you, believe it or not, in the midst of everything, right after the George Floyd, the verdict there, I decided that it was time to take some much needed rest. Right after George Floyd's the verdict, we got the Dante Wright, got the young sister killed in Columbus, Ohio. You had the situation at Elizabeth City. And so in the midst of all the confusion, in the midst of all of the police violence, Brother Brown, I needed a break. So I'm down here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and the only reason I came off my vacation is the respect you do.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate you having you on the show. In your own words, define police brutality.
That's interesting because police brutality can come in many. Police brutality or violence could be emotional, it could be intimidation, where police over-police black communities, where you see too many police cars in communities with the same equivalency in predominantly white communities. Police brutality is the way, it's the manner in which police talk to black citizens, the aggressive tone, authoritative, but the aggressive tone, the dismissive tone. Police brutality can come in the way they use their discretionary powers. We say that if you have 100 arrests for marijuana use, 90 of those arrests are going to be black, 10 of those arrests are going to be white, because police use their discretion when it comes to certain crimes. Black folk go to jail, white folk go home. Police brutality could be excessive use of force. You see it, what was it in Virginia, in Maryland, where the black the black army officer, lieutenant, was maced in his car without any warning at all. That is police brutality. So police brutality, Paul, doesn't always have to result in somebody being killed. It can be, like I said, it could be the tone of voice. It could be the way in which you approach a black person. It can be the discretionary use of privilege. And so it's all of the above. It's not either or, it's all of the above.
Do you believe in some police department in America there is a systematic racism, harassment, and police brutality toward African Americans?
To be brutally honest, there is systemic racism, harassment, and police brutality in every police department in America. It's not that it happens in Columbia, South Carolina, but it doesn't happen in St. Louis. It's not that it happens in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, but it doesn't happen in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The reality that all of us in this country must face is that systemic racism is embedded. It's part of the DNA of this country. Therefore, it would be part of the DNA of the institution that this country has created to be the intimidating force. And so the simple answer is yes, but I think the most important answer is the reason why. Once again, Paul, as long as you have racism in America, You'll have racism on the police force. You'll have racism in government. You'll have racism in corporate America because it's just part of the DNA. And so with that comes harassment. With that comes discrimination against people of color, generalization against people of color, discrimination. And when we talk about racism, Paul, racism also comes in different forms. It could be that people are racially insensitive. They may not be racist, but they could be racially insensitive because they just don't know any better. It's not deliberate. And so the simple answer is yes. When President Obama came out with the 21st Century Policing report, out of about 18 to 21,000 police departments in America, less than 600 took any of those recommendations to heart. We're talking about over 15,000, municipal, local police departments. Less than 1,000 took heed to those recommendations that would have brought us so much further as relates to police reform.
What in the year 2021, watching unarmed people being shot on videos by people you have been taught that will protect you, how safe are our neighborhoods?
Dr. Cornel West was doing an interview with Don Lemon about a month ago. And this is Dr. Cornel West said, Black America is going to get tired of standing by and watching Black Americans be shot down in the streets. Dr. West said that Black Americans are going to stop being the videographers of our own demise. And so when you ask me how safe are our communities, they're not any safer. More police officers does not make a community safer. It definitely doesn't make the Black community safer. We spend more money, Paul, on police enforcement than we do on crime prevention. Until we begin to spend more money on crime prevention, that's what the whole defund the police movement is really all about. Crime prevention. It's about taking the money, the lion's share of the money that we spent on buying police military equipment and putting that money into mental health, putting that money into social services, putting that money into youth activities, putting that money into trying to eliminate poverty. And so when we see Dante Wright shot, this is a police officer, Paul, 10 miles from where the George Floyd trial is being held. She's got 27 years on the police force. She's the president of the police union. She says, taser, taser, taser. But then she shoots. She doesn't grab her taser. This is an experienced police officer. You've got the situation in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. This is an execution. And now you've got 2 police officers who have resigned, 1 retired, and 6 on administrative leave. After George Floyd, after Michael Brown, after Breonna Taylor, after Eric Gardner, after Sandra Bland. And so after we see all of these Black people killed, Paul, nothing's changed in Black America. Nothing has changed on the police force. And so are our communities any safer? No, our communities are no safer. I would submit that after January 6th and the insurrection at the United States Capitol, when you see 80% of the guns in America are owned by white males. We're not talking about police. 80% of guns in America are owned by white males. You got state legislatures across this country who are trying to create white militias. Missouri's no exception. And so, simple answer is no, it's not safer, but why isn't it safer? We went through 4 years of Donald Trump's hatred. Donald Trump unleashed racism in this country like we've never seen before since pre-slavery, since Reconstruction. And the concern the bigger concern that I have, Paul, is that black people are going to say, wait a minute, we're not just going to stand by and get shot by police or anybody else. That is my greatest fear.
Is police brutality an ethical issue?
Yes, it is in part an ethical issue. Because if you talk to police officers, like some of the ones that we deal with in St. Louis with the Ethical Society of Police, you've got police officers who are trying to do their best to protect and serve. But once they put on that uniform, once they put on that badge, they become part of the brotherhood or the sisterhood. They become part of that blue wall of silence. They become part of that blue line, a line that many black police officers are afraid to cross. And so it's ethical in that police officers see the wrong that is taking place, the discrimination that is taking place, and fail to speak up, fail to become whistleblowers, black police or white police. And so therein lies the ethical problem, that police officers are not being forthright in becoming whistleblowers, in speaking truth to power, in calling out the realities of systemic racism and police violence. That's the ethical side of it. But once again, as I said, what we are finding is that it is just too much within the culture of the police department. But yeah, it's definitely an ethical issue.
When we looked at the recent trial of the Floyds and we saw the police chief go on the trial and he really talked against one of his fellow officers, what did that say to you about that chief?
I think that first of all, that was an anomaly. I have never seen in my 50 years of activism that type of honesty, that type of courage, particularly with a police chief. I've seen that with some police officers, but for a chief to come out, go on the stand against a police officer who is being charged with murder, a white officer being charged with the murder of a black person, is the exception and not the rule. And I talk to other police officers and activists across the country who found a glimmer of hope in that. Now, is his testimony and his coming out and his courage going to translate to other police chiefs coming out? I don't think so. I think that there will be some who will be moved and encouraged and motivated by what that particular police chief did. But I still don't think it'll be enough, Paul, to move the needle in America. I think that what we have to do is that the George Floyd Policing Act has got to be enacted. Because in that particular act, we see the elimination of qualified immunity. We see the pushback against police officers' Bill of Rights. We see an increased conversation about civilian oversight boards because we realize that police cannot police themselves. We see a national police database where police can't simply resign to avoid persecution and go to another police jurisdiction and be hired. We see additional training. We see de-escalation training. We see a demilitarization of police. I think that the George Floyd Policing Act is critical to police reform in this country, and that it needs to be enacted. It needs to be enacted swiftly because right now municipal jurisdictions are out of control.
In law
And what it
enforcement,
does too, Paul, what it does too is that the George Floyd Policing Act gives cover to police chiefs who want to do the right thing. I'm sorry for interrupting.
oh, no problem, sir. Thank you. Sorry about that. In law enforcement, how much does fear and how much does arrogance play in the scenario?
I think that both are equally strong. There is a definite arrogance, but it comes with, you know, I'm a James Bond junkie, so I know all the James Bond movies. But one of them that really stood out to me, particularly because of the theme, the title, A License to Kill. Police officers, unlike anyone else in our country, with the exception of military, have a license to kill. And they do it indiscriminately or discriminately, depending upon who you ask. So there is an arrogance that for some police, for too many police officers, that once they put on that badge and then put on that gun, that they are above the law, that their word is the ultimate authority, not the circuit attorney or the prosecutor, not the judge, not the jury, because too often police officers become judge, jury, and executioner. And we've seen that all too often. And because the bar is set so high with qualified immunity and the Police Bill of Rights and the Blue Wall of Silence, it is so hard to hold a police officer accountable in this country and to prosecute a police officer. It doesn't happen that often, and so you have that encouragement that I can do anything and not be held accountable. And so that's one side of it. I think that there are police officers who have a genuine fear when they put on the badge and put on the gun. But it's a fear that's been created by society. It's a fear that's been created by poverty. It's a fear that's been created by racism. It's a fear that's been created by an inadequate public education system and a public health system. Once again, Paul, it really goes back to the DNA of America, where black people have been placed in a compartment, and in that compartment there seems to be nothing that propels us to any good, with the exception of ourselves, our faith, our belief in each other. That is what has propelled us out of the darkness of poverty. And so the police officer who over-polices a black community that has been inundated by racism and discrimination and bigotry and prejudice is going to go into that environment knowing that most of us have been traumatized or victims of PTSD. And so you're going to go in there with a trigger finger. You're going to go in there fearful of your own life, fearful of the same environment that that was created to suppress and oppress. And so, yeah, so a police officer is going to go into a situation and shoot first and ask questions later. The Columbus, Ohio situation is a perfect example. Now, granted, I wish the young lady had put down the knife. If she's the one that called 911, she felt that her safety was in danger. The police officer responded. We submit that, was there another way that situation could have been resolved other than the young lady being shot 4 times? But once again, it goes back to your question, the question of fear. People are afraid of us, Paul, not because we're wielding a gun, not because we have a knife, not because we pose a threat because we have some type of lethal weapon, but police fear us because of the color of our skin. We are weaponized because of the color of our skin. That's the thing that is most perplexing and causes the most angst and anguish and anger among black activists, that we get killed not because we have a gun. George Floyd didn't have a gun. George Floyd didn't have a knife. Sandra Bland got killed in her bed. Breonna Taylor. Dante Wright, he was just afraid of police. And so the fear goes both ways, man. The officer, the Army lieutenant, he said he didn't stop because he wanted to get into a lighted area. He didn't want to stop in the dark. This is a United States Army officer who said, I'm not going to stop in the dark. I see the lights. I know it. I know I'm supposed to obey that command, but I'm not going to stop until I get in the lights. So that fear goes both ways, Paul.
Reverend Gray, if it was reversed and it was black officers killing white citizens, do you feel like more attention would have been given to this problem?
Absolutely. You think about it. It's already been the case. There was a case in Milwaukee, a black police officer, Ethiopian ancestry, shoots by mistake a white female in her driveway. According to him, he had reason to fear for his life, but it was a white female. He got charged. He got convicted. He got charged. He got convicted. It was a slam dunk. It was, somebody's got to pay for the death of this white woman. And so, yeah, if black police officers were out here killing white citizens, choking them with black knees on white necks, if black police officers were to kill young black boys because young black boys like Tamara Rice had a play gun, if black police officers were to do a no-knock warrant in white neighborhoods and kill white people, come on, man. There'd be police reform already. There'd be changes in the system already. But black life is cheap. At least that's how we feel. We're made to feel in this country that there's no sacredness, there's no value to black lives. And that's why we continue to say Black Lives Matter. And people say, but Reverend Gray, don't all lives matter? And I respond, it doesn't seem like it to my community. It doesn't seem like all lives matter. It seems like white lives matter. I mean, the Asian community rose up and everybody listened because the Asian community rose up, and they should listen, because there has been discrimination and violence against the Asian community, and it should not happen. But we've got to go to the streets. We need state legislation and federal laws in order for people to recognize and acknowledge that Black lives matter. And until we see some change in this country, Paul, where we believe that people have actually heard the cries of Black people, we'll continue to protest, we'll continue to agitate, we'll continue to push for legislation, we'll continue to call police violence out wherever it is, because Black lives do matter.
Reverend Gray, we're running short on time, but I want you, if you have time, to come back in a couple of weeks and we can continue this conversation about police brutality.
Mr. Brown, anytime you call me, listen, you know already, you have me at hello.
Yes.
I appreciate you. I know what you stand for. You stand for manhood and scholarship and perseverance and uplift. You stand for the betterment of all people, of all colors, of all genders. And I appreciate the work that you're doing on your show to help to educate, to help inform, to help motivate, and to help inspire. And so anytime you call, it'll be an honor to be on your show.
I appreciate that, Reverend Gray. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ladies
God
and
bless you,
gentlemen, for
man.
watching the show, and you be encouraged. Thank you.